Thank you, Rutuja. Good evening, friends, and welcome to PVR Limited's Q3 FY 22-21 post-result earnings call. From the management team, we have with us Mr. Gautam Datta, CEO, PVR Limited, Mr. Kamal Gianchandani, Chief of Business Planning and Strategy and CEO for PVR Pictures, Mr. Nitin Sood, CEO, PVR Limited, and Mr. Rahul Gautam, SVP and Head of Corporate Finance. As usual, we'll start the call with a brief management discussion on the quarterly performance, followed by an interactive Q&A session. Nitin, over to you for your initial remarks.
Thank you, Ankur, and thank you everyone for taking out time to join PVR's third quarter earnings call. I'll give a brief synopsis of what are the key events which has transpired during the quarter, and then maybe we can directly go to Q&A. A copy of our investor update is also available on the website of the company, which discusses the results in greater detail. So during this quarter, the Ministry of Home Affairs permitted cinemas to reopen starting 15th October onwards, and they put a capacity restriction of 50%. So all cinemas across the country could open, but with a maximum 50% capacity. Subsequent to this, various state governments across the country issued their respective notification, depending upon the COVID situation, and allowing cinemas to reopen in various states. As a result of which, our cinema openings during this quarter was staggered between 15th October to November and December. As we speak today, most of the cinemas across the country are now open in states where PVR operates, except for Rajasthan and Jharkhand, which till date have not yet decided or given permissions to open cinemas. As part of PVR's portfolio, both these states represent very less number of screens for us. So pretty much the entire circuit is open. I think the challenge has been the content availability during the quarter, because the cinema opening was really staggered, and it was kind of phased out between October, November and December. We didn't see too many new movie releases, as a result of which revenues were very minuscule. The total admissions during the quarter were only 10 lakh admissions, largely on account of movies like Tenet and Wonder Woman, which were released, and a few small films which released during the quarter. I think as the cinema circuit is now open, and I think the content pipeline likely to evolve over the next few months, we'll have a better visibility on how the situation may pan out. But very important piece that we managed to close as we were opening our cinemas was hang on our fixed cost base. We were able to close out settlements with most of our landlords, and we had sought a rent and a CAM waiver from our landlords for the period we were shut, and some kind of rebates post-opening till 31st March, till the time we anticipate the business will take time to come back to normal. Happy to report that we've closed out settlements with almost 88% of our landlords, and been able to get large rental waivers and discounts in rent and CAM charges, not only for the period of lockdown, but post-opening till 31st March. As a result of which, if you look at the rent and CAM expense that the company has incurred during the first 9 months of the year, is lower by almost 80% as compared to, I think, corresponding period of previous year, which is really reflective of the strength of the brand and the value that we bring to the shopping centers and malls. Also, on all the other fixed costs, which have been, a big cost drive to manage these costs as we come out of the pandemic. Even though cinemas opened, I think we managed our fixed costs quite well. And the fixed costs during the quarter were also substantially lower than what they were in Q3 of last year, in spite of the fact that cinemas have started reopening. We've managed a good hang on the cost, and our fixed cost reduction during the quarter was almost 63% lower fixed cost as compared to Q3 of last year. On the cash position and the liquidity front, I think company has proactively managed its balance sheet well. We did a rights issue earlier this year. We also took additional credit lines from our banking partners. As on 31st of December, we were sitting with a cash and liquidity of about 370 crores to meet our various obligations and tide through these turbulent times. The board of the company also, earlier in its meeting held on 18th of December, also decided to boost up the capital of the company, and they had passed an enabling resolution which permits the company to raise an additional equity of up to rupees 800 crore. The same currently awaits shareholder approval. And the idea is, as we come out of the pandemic, we want to have a very strong balance sheet, which ensures and enables us to maintain the growth momentum. Clearly, I think as we started this quarter, it has started on a very positive note. The South Indian film industry has really taken the lead in releasing films, and the first blockbuster of the year, I think Master, which has got released on Pongal in Tamil Nadu, has done some great numbers. I will let my colleague Kamal talk more about it during the call. But clearly we are seeing, in South India, as you release big films, people are back at the cinemas, and clearly this apprehension that was kind of floating around that people will be reluctant to go back is not visible at all. And the cinemas are kind of completely sold out in Tamil Nadu, and entire South India, wherever the film is released, is doing exceedingly well. And we are hopeful that, Master will be a case study based on which you will see over the next few weeks the Bollywood film guys and more South Indian regional guys planning the release calendar of the films which are currently, ready and kind of awaiting release. So that's a broad summary of what transpired during the quarter. I'll hand the floor back to Ankur and we can get into Q&As.
Yeah, Rituja, please.
Shall we start with the question and answer session, sir?
Yeah, Rituja, please start.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Avnish Roy from Edelweiss. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. My first question is on Rajasthan and Jharkhand. So, how does these two relatively reasonably large states, it is not a very minuscule state, how does this not opening up act as a reason for the delay of Hindi content? Second, in terms of discussion when you are having with these two specific state governments, what is the pushback? Because it's not that they are on the higher side in terms of COVID cases. Kerala has been very high. Maharashtra, which used to dominate, opened up long time back. So what is the pushback you are getting? And on the 50% rollback in Tamil Nadu, what is your assessment? Is it just a case of union government wanting to do it first? So do you expect in some states or the union government in general soon giving 50% approval that it should be taken off in terms of occupancy?
Avnish, this is Kamal. The first question, what is the contribution of Rajasthan, Jharkhand, is about 6 to 7% as far as Hindi films are concerned, which is a fairly small percentage. You would recall in past there have been films like Padmavati which have had issues in Rajasthan and many other states, and they've ended up with big box office numbers in spite of those states not releasing. Of course, those were different reasons. But the point I'm trying to make is that, no, this is not a dead trend. Hindi films get about 6 to 7% from Rajasthan and Jharkhand combined. and producers would be very happy to go ahead with the release, this would not be a deterrent. I mean, there would be other factors, other variables which would help them decide decide to release or decide to hold back, but this would not be a deterrent. The second point, the second question, what is holding back the state governments? Very difficult to speak for the state governments. We've been in constant touch with them through our advocacy body, Multiplex Association of India, and also through the local cinema exhibition associations. The pushback is mainly because the governments wanted more time and they wanted to cases to come down and situation to be much more contained, which it is. And we are equally surprised that these two governments have decided to push the opening of cinemas for so long. But that said, we are hopeful that during January, both these governments will accede to our request and would permit opening of theatres also in these two states.
And
repeat the question.
And the 50% occupancy?
50% occupancy is something which would have to be decided by the central government. Again, we've been in touch with the government on regular basis, and although we cannot speak for the government, but we remain quite confident that in a matter of, I would say, less than a couple of months, we should end up with a higher ability to sell higher capacity is what we are hopeful of, but we'll have to wait and see.
Right, that's helpful. My follow-up to what you said is, on the Hindi content release, so when we were in October end, it was expected that by Diwali, which is November mid, we will see good Hindi movie release, but because of Maharashtra delay in terms of screen opening, I understood that so then it was expected December end. Now that didn't happen and now we are in January. So one, if Bengali movies can release and Tamil movies can release, what is the issue with Hindi? Second, we are seeing all forms of consumption see positive surprise. If you see car sales, jewelry sales, QSR, paint sales, FMCG, everything is doing well. And you yourself have given the data for Tamil Nadu and Bengal. So why is the Hindi content not releasing? I understand international part of the business, but that's also getting delayed, right? When will US revive? When will Europe revive in terms of COVID cases? We don't know. So if you could explain what is the pushback on the Hindi content, good content. I understand small Hindi movie here and there, but that doesn't really swing the needle.
This is a fair question, and our various discussions with the producers, our sense is that there were doubts about the customer audience sentiment. 50% restriction on capacity was an issue which most people felt was manageable because, you could spread the film wide and you could spread the film in maximum number of shows, as has been the case with Master. And producers felt that 50% capacity is something which they could live with, but they were apprehensive about the customer sentiment. There was a lot of apprehension that people would stay away from cinemas, especially families. But the good news is that Master has Master, which was always expected to do well. Vijay is a huge, massive star down south, especially in Tamil Nadu. But I think the performance that we've seen in the last 2 days has exceeded even the wildest expectations that most people had. The film is turning out to be number 2 all-time biggest opener for Tamil cinema. The biggest opener was Sarkar with about 23.5 crore net box office collection in Tamil Nadu, and Master is opened with about 20.5 crore net box office in Tamil Nadu. So with the current prevailing circumstances, with all the restrictions, the kind of box office the film has achieved clearly validates the argument that we've been sharing with the producers and with also our colleagues on the analyst side, that there is a pent-up demand and people would be happily come into cinemas as and when there is a good quality film. So I think that point has been validated, and I think it's a matter of time when producers of big Hindi films who have ready films with them would come out and announce their dates. We are already in touch with a lot of producers, but we don't want to get into specific names at this stage. We'll have to wait for producers to come out and officially announce dates.
And the last question, any savings on rental and CAM? See, when you renegotiated, say in October or September, that point of time, the movie content release was envisaged differently. It has been below that expectation because of the Hindi content not getting released. So, do you manage some more savings, or is it frozen till March so we don't get any savings? I understand some of this is linked to revenue, so it doesn't really impact too much. But on the CAM or anything which is fixed, or any savings on the revenue share also possible because of this delay?
Nitin, would you like to take this question?
See, Abneesh, most of these rental negotiations with our landlords was to tide over this pandemic period, and especially for cinemas, when we went into the pandemic, everyone was expecting it to be a 2-3 month issue. As we are coming out of it, it's almost been 8-9 months, about 7.5 months since the cinemas were closed, and another 4-5 months we are hoping for recovery. So most of the negotiations and discussions currently have been focused around, getting a relief for this lockdown period, and also for next few months till we open. So most of the relief that we've sought for are limited till 31st of March. We've largely managed to get complete waiver of rentals during the lockdown period. And apart from that, we've managed to get rebates and discounts till 31st March. And if you look at the numbers are quite huge. In the first 9 months of this year, the numbers have been almost 440 against 444 crore reduction in the rent plus CAM payout, and some more discounts will come in the next quarter as well. So I think the discussions have been focused only around this, because when we were negotiating this, the expectation was the business would bounce back. If this extends beyond that, then I think we'll have to re-engage. But currently, we've been focused on seeking release to tide over this period.
Okay, that's all from me. Thanks a lot and all the best. Thanks.
Moderator?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure that the management is able to address the questions from all participants, request you to limit your questions to 2 per participant. If you have a follow-up question, you may rejoin the queue. Thank you. The next question is from the line of Shubhamkar Oja from SKS Capital. Please go ahead.
No, thanks. I'm done with my question.
Thank you. Participants who wish to remove yourself from the question queue may press star and 2. The next question is from the line of Niket Shah from Motilal Oswal Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. A couple of questions from my side. First, just wanted to know on the rentals you did highlight within that how we've got a waiver and discount till the 31st March. How will the rentals really change post 31st of March? So as we go into say next year, or is the rate going to move up? Because at some point of time the multiplex guy also thinks that I have to also cover up for the lost revenues.
No, in our case, most of our rental negotiations are restricted to this 12-month period. There is no escalation in rentals because of the relief that we've sought in the next year. There could be 1 or 2 exceptions to this, but largely no change for the next fiscal.
Okay, so it goes back to the pre-COVID levels as such.
That's right.
Okay. And is there a change in the mix of our rentals from between revenue share and fixed?
As I said, most of the rental discussions have been focused around tiding over this financial year and 12-month period of pandemic. On the existing properties, there is no change as such apart from the relief for this 12-month period. But for most of the new properties that we'll end up contracting now going forward, there could be potential changes in how we structure some of these leases.
Okay, perfect. Sure. My second question was, is there a possibility that you might see some of the states coming in, giving you some waiver on entertainment tax? And also a similar question is, how will the sharing between the producers and PVR change in the post-COVID regime? Do you think there will be some savings there which might come up to us?
I think Kerala has taken the lead by waiving off entertainment tax in Kerala for a couple of months. We are also getting a similar sense from some of the other states. And at the same time, budget which is expected to be announced on 1st February. The Finance Ministry is also, we made several representations to the Finance Ministry, and we are also hopeful that they would give some relief measures or some stimulus measures due consideration when they finalize budgets for the next financial year for the service sector specifically. So we remain hopeful all around, both from central government and state government, and our sense is that the government will give us a favorable consideration. On your second question, on a short-term basis, yes, there would be some changes in Filmire payouts to the distributors, producers, but like we've shared earlier, these would not be meaningful deviations from what we've been paying to producers in the past, and whatever changes are there would be temporary in nature.
Okay. Thank you so much, and I will come back in queue.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pranav Tendulkar from Rare Enterprises. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. Sir, just questions. Can you explain the unit economics in the states where actually the movie has started, like Tamil Nadu and Bengal probably? Unit economics, by unit economics, I mean ticket per ticket realization of people adjusted for the timings, etc. Are there any notable changes? That is one. And second thing is that if any other parts of the world which are comparable to India or developed markets where movie exhibition is again started, and how is the people's response, and what are the changes that you are observing anywhere else in the world? Those are my two questions. And thanks for surviving this crisis. I know this was the toughest for your industry. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your wishes. Maybe Nitin can take the first question, and then I could jump in to answer the second question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I understood the question correctly, you were looking for an understanding on our ticket pricing strategy and
correct.
How that has evolved post-reopening. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think, we were obviously, our key focus during the quarter and in the near term is to bring back footfalls, and we are doing all necessary steps, including taking all the safety measures to give confidence to the customers to come back. And pricing is also one of the factors that we are playing with. Clearly, given in last quarter, bulk of the content was library content, old content. We were, as it is, running a lot of promotions at lower ticket pricing just to get customers back. But clearly, pricing has never been a concern in our business. We believe that whenever the content comes back, the ticket pricing will move up and customers will be willing to pay. But yes, I mean, we will continue to use pricing, both in terms of new content as well as library content, while as the content sort of becomes more smoother to bring back customers. But as you can see, even in current quarter, our ATP is at about 160 rupees, 164 to be precise, which is still lower than our pre-COVID levels. But, there are obviously, during blockbuster content, that ticket pricing tends to move up quite rapidly.
So actually, even to add to what Rahul said, if you look at our ATP during Tenet, Wonder Woman, and now Master, we are slightly higher than what we were operating at the pre-COVID level. So whenever new content, powerful content would come, and this is what we saw with advent of 7 or 8 movies during Durga Puja in October, and then with 2 Hollywood films, and now with Tamil films, we are able to charge same or a bit higher ATPs very easily from the consumer.
I mean, see, even if you see our SPH, even in Q3, our SPH is now almost back to pre-COVID levels at 95 as compared to 100 rupees in Q3. So for us, I think, as you've said, the fundamentally pricing has never been a concern, whether it is for ticket or food. We'll have to deliver experience which works for the customer. And as long as there are new content coming, pricing has never been a challenge.
Right, sir. But there is a probability that, say, for an extended time, the utilization could be 50% or 60% capped by regulators. So in that case, what is minimum pricing that you see? Is it? I mean, it is okay if you even increase the prices, right?
Yes, absolutely. We can. There is enough elasticity, and once things settle down with content, we believe that we should be able to at least go up by about 4-5% over the pre-COVID levels in terms of the ATP.
Right, sir. Right. And the second question about global parallels. Yeah.
So, firstly, continuing the thread with Master has done well not just in India, but it has done well also in all international markets where you have Indian population, specifically South Indian population, so be it UAE, Malaysia, Singapore, pockets of US where cinemas are operational. Master has done well across the board in the international markets, which goes to show that the behavior of customers, this whole tendency to come out and watch a big film on the big screen, is pretty homogeneous. That's one. Number two, Japan and China are two international markets which have a very strong domestic industry. And in the recent last 3 or 4 months, Japan has seen a huge, massive success called Demon Slayer, which is an animation film which has shattered all box office records. That's one. So that's Japan. And China, similar experience where 800, again a local film released about 2 months back. It's again broken all previous records. So wherever virus has been contained, wherever government has been aggressive in dealing with containing virus and putting in place safety protocols, and wherever people, customers, society has adapted to the new normal, films, cinemas have bounced back, rebounded fairly quickly, and that's quite visible in Japan and China, two specific markets which also have a strong local industry.
Right, sir. And those regulators are not limiting it to any capacity utilization of their own wings, right?
No, these markets are also regulating capacities. So China has been hovering between 50 and 75. When 800 had released, capacity restriction was to the extent of 50%, and similarly Japan has had capacity restrictions. So the numbers that these films have been done with the capacity restrictions.
Right. So that would mean that the price realization would have substantially gone up, right, for that kind of box office collection. Is that right, or am I wrong?
See, our sense is we don't have the detailed numbers in front of us in terms of the ticket price and the number of admissions, but our sense is that the ticket price was increased marginally, not by too much. It's just the sheer number of people who came out and watched these films has resulted in a higher box office.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot, sir. Thanks, I'm done.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jignesh Joshi from Prabhudas Lilladher. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity, sir. I just have one question on our financials. So, sir, if I look at our balance sheet, we have some 370 crores of cash, if I'm not mistaken, and we are planning a fundraise of 800 crores odd. So, this would take our liquidity to anywhere between 1100 to 1200 crores. And if I look at our current quarter operating cost, that was approximately 160 crores. And for that matter, even our pre-COVID operating cost per quarter is anywhere between 430 to 450 crores. Now, even if we burn 450 crores per quarter, which is the pre-COVID run rate, we have a liquidity for 2 to 3 quarters. So in that context, the fundraise appears to be slightly high. So can you just clarify on this math, please?
Yeah. So broadly, I think the way we approach the business is we want to always raise capital ahead of when we need it. That's number one. Secondly, the broad reasons why we want to maintain a strong balance sheet is that we want to keep the leverage levels low. We had done a QIP in November of 2019 with the objective of reducing leverage, and we had successfully achieved that. Unfortunately, the cash losses during the pandemic have brought us back to the same situation. We believe that as we come out of the pandemic, there will be a massive amount of growth opportunity lying ahead of us. The industry would likely consolidate further. Smaller operators and smaller players will get weaker. The bigger operators like us will get an opportunity to participate in greater amount of opportunities. And we want our balance sheet to remain strong, as we come out of the pandemic so that we can accelerate growth. So the idea is to keep the leverage level low, have enough dry powder in the balance sheet to accelerate growth. And thirdly, just in case the recovery takes slightly longer than what we're expecting to recover, have enough cushion in the balance sheet to tide over, the short-term losses that we may have to bear. And that's broadly the thought process. And as I said, this is currently an enabling resolution. We haven't decided on either the final quantum of fundraise or the timing of the fundraise. So this is just an enabling approval that we've currently taken.
Okay, sir. And I mean, this fundraise, potential utilization, will it be towards funding cash losses, or I mean, you also hinted something about inorganic opportunity which can come up. So, is anything finalized at this point in time, or I mean, where are we on that front?
So we are not looking at any inorganic opportunity as of now. So that's not the main reason for the fundraise.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jay Doshi from Kotak Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I've got three questions. Nitin, in the opening remarks, you mentioned that fixed cost reduction during the quarter was about 63%. I just want to understand how much of this will sustain when you go back to 35-36% occupancy. If you can give us some color in terms of permanent reduction in costs.
No, so you will have to break down this cost into different elements. There are two elements of this cost. One is external cost, which is rent and CAM. Right. Those costs are likely to come back as we, get back to the next financial year and get back to pre-COVID levels. On all the other costs that we are, incurring, we expect, especially in the people cost and our overhead cost, a minimum 10 to 15% long-time reduction in cost. It's very difficult to quantify on the exact number going forward. But, as we come out of the pandemic, we think that some of the cost reduction will be permanent in nature, the way we are restructuring the organization. I think specifics will have to be detailed out as we come out, because a lot of stuff is work in progress right now. But we believe that we will be able to reduce some of our fixed costs on a long-term basis.
Right. This overhead cost that you referred to is a sizable number. People cost is something which we know. So what do you classify as overhead generally?
So if you broadly look at, I think our quarterly
90 crores per quarter.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic. So Jay, it was 90 crores per quarter pre-pandemic. So it is a reasonable number. So 30 crores per month.
Understood. Okay, that's helpful, Rahul. Thanks. Second question is, are you seeing? You just mentioned in the response to previous question that you expect some permanent closures of single screens or standalone multiplexes. So, are you already seeing a lot of lease deals come your way? And how will it work? Would you sort of get opportunity to buy some of the smaller screens, or the operators may vacate and you will negotiate leases? You have more lease pipeline?
See, it's too premature to say anything, Jay. I think the situation is evolving as cinemas are reopening or coming out of the pandemic, and the discussion with landlords are happening. I think We expect some of the smaller operators or smaller single screen operators to be who do not have the balance sheet to support and come back and restart business to have a problem. And we also think that the real estate developers and landlords will also want to partner over a long term with strong quality operators. This is likely to throw up opportunities in favor of some of the bigger operators. In what form and manner some of this will potentially help in scaling up is, I think, slightly early to say. But we are already seeing signs where the smaller operators are under stress, and there is likely going to be a shift of bulk of the growth towards larger operators as we move along.
And what was your view in terms of rentals for the leases that you sign going forward over the next couple of years? Is there any deflationary trend that you're seeing in terms of favorable for you on rentals?
As I said, too premature to say, and I think, but all of us, because a lot of retail businesses have come out of the pandemic, and I think the situation will evolve over the next few months. But clearly, I think as an industry, as a retail industry per se, we'll have to see how the rental situation evolves. But clearly, I think we think the situation to be much better as compared to pre-COVID levels.
Right. And any, have you reconsidered or relooked at your, capex per screen, and will that change going forward? As you resume screen openings, it will be broadly similar to what we were seeing earlier. Just trying to understand from a annual capex standpoint, or are we likely to see some improvement in, overall cash generation potential?
No, we don't estimate a per screen capex to change materially, because we expect we want to deliver, I think, the same quality experience which has been the cornerstone of our strategy. And I think how it will evolve in terms of negotiation between landlords and us is too premature for us to comment on. But we don't see any significant changes in a per screen capex intensity, in the post-COVID world.
Right. Just one final one. I think, at least when we're seeing about 10-15% of restaurant supply has gone out of the system, at least on the aggregator platforms. And if I recall correctly, prior to COVID, you were considering scaling up F&B business by participating on aggregator platforms, and SPI Cinemas, I think, was already onboarded on Swiggy Zomato. So have you sort of, thought a little bit more or done some more work during this pandemic on that front? And should we expect you to, participate on that opportunity outside of cinemas in the F&B space? Any thoughts, any color on how, your F&B strategy will evolve going forward?
Yes, you will see traction. On 18th of this month is when we start off our beta trials on Zomato, and within about 4 to 6 weeks, we'll be scaling this up to many more sites. So clearly, the plan is there, and we will learn as we go, and we will start our journey on the aggregators within this week itself.
Thank you. All the best, and look forward to it.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Karthik Shelappa from Bruna Vista Fund Management. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity, sir. I have two questions. Firstly, if you notice, at least in the last 9 months or so, even big star movies have started going exclusively to OTT, and this is not confined to Hindi alone. This probably even extends to Tamil, Telugu, as well as probably even Malayalam or so. So how do you hope to assess this risks where potentially big star films which would have otherwise released in cinema are incrementally getting comfortable to do a direct OTT release? And in such cases, in your interaction with producers also, how do they compare the ROI between theatricals and a direct OTT release?
It's a good question, Karthik, and it's a fair point you've made. That said, what has happened in the last 6-7 months with a decent number of mid-sized films and a few large films going directly on streaming is something which will have to be seen with an asterisk, because there were investments involved and Indian production sector is fairly fragmented. So producers had a running meter of cost of money which was building up, and a lot of people felt that this was an opportunity to exit, get their principal back, and also make some money out of it. Our various interactions with the producers and also some of the subtle signals that we are reading from the market, when you look at the actor fee or the number of films which are going into production or the cost of production which is being envisaged by the producers, there has been absolutely no reduction, which clearly goes to show that producers in their mind are factoring in a theatrical release, for the films, the new films which they have started to produce. Actors, there has been no reduction in the fees, so clearly actors also expect their films to go on to the theatrical platform. From a producer's point of view, the metric that you spoke about, the return on investment metric, clearly, ability to take multiple bites out of the same fruit is a better strategy, which is to take it first on the theatrical platform and then take it to the other distribution platform. That strategy is an age-old strategy which has worked well for the entire ecosystem. Producers definitely prefer that strategy over releasing it directly on streaming, and this applies more to the big films where the yield per eyeball in theater is still the highest as compared to all the other distribution platforms, and theatrical in any case is pretty much the only pay-per-view platform which is available in the Indian ecosystem. So for all of these factors, as far as the ROI metric is concerned, producers definitely find it much more lucrative to take a film theatrical and then release it on other distribution platforms. That said, because we have multiple streaming platforms, and each one of them is competing with not just cinemas but also with their peers in the streaming platform space, clearly they'll have appetite for new films. And to that end, we expect that the production community will expand their portfolio. Streaming platforms will continue to take some films for direct-to-streaming release, but that would not come at the cost of the number of films that we're releasing in theatrical. Same number or pretty much around the same number will continue to release in the theatrical platform. Producers will produce more and meet this incremental appetite or demand from the streaming platforms. So that's the way we see things playing out in future, and we believe both these distribution platforms will coexist beautifully and in fact will feed off each other, and producers will have liberties now to make more films, better quality films, and perhaps make much more money than they were making earlier.
Got it. So my second question is the similar thing, but from a consumer point of view. So if we look at, let's say, the ticket prices right now on a blended basis, let's say if you guys are running at about 150, 160 rupees, and on top of that, if you put a spend per head of about, let's say, 60, 70 rupees, that's about 200 per head. And if a family of three, let's say, were to go to a movie, I'm counting out the experience part of it because that's also an important factor, I agree. But from a pure value equation, if you're looking at, let's say, 600 plus, and if I were to look at the price points or the packages that the OTTs are offering on a monthly basis, it's very, very compelling. It's almost that if you have, let's say, one decent movie in a 2-month window and a good web series, it's already good value for money. In that context, I just want to have two questions. Number one, does this mean that the share of the top 10 movies or the share of the top 50 movies in the box office will continue to increase because people will ration their visit to the cinema halls? Number two, does this in any way inhibit your own pricing power in raising prices for tickets in states where it is allowed?
So your first question, whether the top 15, 20 grossers will continue to expand their proportion in the overall box office or the admission numbers, we don't think so, because we've looked at the data of the last 7-8 years, and this number, although it has increased in a very steady fashion, but the increase has been fairly small. And the reason for that is that there are big films and then there are films which turn out to be big films after they release. There are these sleeper hits which do exceedingly well at the box office and exceed all expectations. And frankly, that's the DNA of film business, right? I mean, producers are in this business because they have this portfolio approach. They think more like a venture capital fund where maybe one or two films will perform disproportionately well as compared to the other films in the portfolio. And those one or two films will make up for lack of performance by the other films. So, this proportion is not going to change dramatically simply because India as a market is ripe for content-based films as well as blockbuster films. So there are these big production, big star-cast films, but then there are also smaller films which do exceedingly well at the box office after the release. We don't think that phenomena, that practice will change. People will keep turning out new content with exceptional talent which is not yet established, but content which is so compelling that it will do well at the box office. And as a result, the proportion of the top 100 films, the bucket that we normally look at as compared to the overall releases, that will remain pretty much at 78-79% of our overall box office or admissions. And that's been the case in the last 7-8 years. We expect that to continue over the next 3, 4, 5 years also. The second question was, can you repeat the second question?
Yeah, my second question is whether this in any way inhibits your pricing power to probably take up ticket prices in states where you're allowed, excluding, let's say, the first 2-3 days of the release window for a star movie, like, let's say, for Master. Excluding that, does this inhibit your pricing power?
Well, along with Master, we've also had some smaller Tamil films which released yesterday. The film called Ishwaran with Shimbu. Now, that's a small film. But again, doing exceedingly well at the box office. There is a Telugu film called Red, which released also yesterday, which has also done exceedingly well, is opened quite well. Our pricing power, and when you were giving the backdrop to your point, you said, if you set aside the experience, but that is the most critical part of our business. The way people are wired, the way we've grown up, we are all used to out-of-home entertainment, and it's all part of the entire ecosystem. We don't look at people or this market as a streaming or cinema situation. We look at these two as an and situation where people would go to cinemas, people would also go to streaming, spend a lot of time on streaming, and now that time could be at the cost of reading, it could be at the cost of sleep time, it could be at the cost of television, other channels. We don't know. We'll see how things play out. Also, please don't forget that when films release in theaters, they are exclusive for some time. For a couple of weeks, they're exclusive in theaters. And films, because they're part of the social fabric, they create a discussion. And cinema, especially when films release in cinemas, there is, a creation of an event and people like to participate in the event. So perishable in nature. People love to go and watch it in the first 3-4 days of the first week or maybe the second weekend. So if you legally want to watch a big film or a small film which you heard some compelling reviews of, you'll have to go and watch it in cinemas because it won't be available on streaming platforms. We are not looking at a situation where streaming and theaters will release the same film on the same date. That situation is something which we are not foreseeing. So there would always be some exclusive period, within which the films would be available only in cinemas.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much and wish you and the team all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Dheeresh Pathak from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. For the 9 months, for the 3 months and for the exit month, what was the operational cash burn?
Yeah, so if you look at our EBITDA loss is about 108 crores for the quarter, so that's about 35-36 crores for the month. That's the cash burn. Our fixed cost for the quarter was about 159 crores.
Okay. So starting April 2021, when the concessions on the real estate go away, So your fixed cost from 52 crores per month would then become like 100 crores per month, right? Because you'll have no concessions on the real estate.
Yeah. So, I mean, as Nitin mentioned during the call, our rent, CAM, utilities, these will go back to pre-COVID levels because those are contractual or regulatory payments to be made. For rest of the costs, we are expecting a sort of a long-term sustainable reduction of between 10 to 15%.
Okay. 10 to 15%. No, I was just working on the maths that you've given on slide 14. So you're showing 52 crores per month, and there's a 450 crore rental reduction for 9 months. So that is like a 50 crore benefit you got on the rent, right? So if that goes away, and if I add that, so roughly I'm getting like, I was trying to do it like that. So is it?
If you look at our Q3 FY20 number, that's a 430 odd crores of quarterly fixed expense.
That is 144 crores per month in that pre-COVID quarter.
Yes. Out of that, if you look at rent, CAM and utilities, that's about 55-60% of revenue, of our cost. I'm saying of the balance cost, which is 106 crores of people cost and 9 crores of other overhead. On this cost, we're expecting a 10 to 15% reduction.
10 to 15% reduction. Understood. Okay. Correct. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Vikram from Maybank. Please go ahead.
The ceiling on footfalls, is there a ceiling on footfalls in the malls or shopping complexes?
No, there is no ceiling on malls or shopping complexes. There is a ceiling in terms of capacity utilization in cinemas to the extent of 50%.
Yeah. Mike, why I asked this question was my personal experience and also as per some of the reports. So the footfalls in malls are only down by 20% to pre-COVID levels. Is there any kind of mapping or color or any analysis that you will be able to provide, especially in case of malls which have higher footfalls are seeing higher footfalls in the malls are seeing higher footfalls in theaters, or the high-end malls are seeing more footfalls? Any kind of analysis, any kind of color on that would go a long way.
Gautam, you want to take this?
Not really. We've not been able to find a correlation between footfalls to malls to conversion to cinema. I think largely our spaces would be driven by the content. So whenever we've seen now a film like Master release, 80% of the footfalls being generated by this film are also feeding into the mall. So it's really a question of getting a powerful, strong content, and we believe that that in itself will be the main driver of footfalls to the cinema.
And again, Vikram, just to add to what Gautam said, we've been reading what various mall operators have been saying in terms of footfalls, and they seem to be stating between 75 to 80% of pre-COVID level footfalls are back. Now that is despite of footfalls not coming to cinemas as yet. So, I think, as more content gets lined up, the footfalls for cinemas will improve and same will also reflect in the mall footfalls.
Fair enough. My second question is on the loyalty program. Is there anything special being done, because it was sort of introduced just a few months before the lockdown, and it did generate quite a buzz amongst your patrons. So, and then of course there was a lull because of the lockdown and even now. So any special initiative that you have taken to attract or basically ask them to come first because they are already your loyal patrons?
The loyalty is seen as a great tool for the operations today. We work very closely with our database and the loyalty program simply to drive not only awareness. The first level when we opened cinema was about awareness about what all we've done and how safe cinemas are. We've also been able to sell a lot of gift cards over our loyalty program. It's just a matter of now waiting for content to drive in. But films like Tenet and Wonder Woman, we were able to do a lot with our loyalty program and garner some decent amount of footfalls through the campaigns we ran on the loyalty.
Thank you. And my last question. So in the Western countries, especially the Europe and the Americas, we are seeing a little bit of yo-yoing on the COVID numbers in general. And what kind of effect? So earlier, in fact, UK was open; their screens were open for a longer duration, and then they shut. And again, the numbers have risen. So what's been the trend or the experience there, and what's your view with respect to India in that case? Anything that you've seen over there where, because of the yo-yoing, basically, the numbers have... Luckily, India has seen more of a secular decline in the number of cases. So I'm just wondering if, in case the numbers do spike up in our country.
We've been in touch with the exhibition community in other countries on regular basis, and it is really unfortunate that some of the countries, in spite of all the resources, in spite of having a much smaller base of population, I'm excluding US when I say this, have struggled with the virus and, now have second and third waves of virus, troubling the society as well as the economy. Fortunately, and we can speak more for India, less for the overseas countries, clearly what's happening in the overseas countries is all over the news channels, and we are all watching it with a lot of disappointment, and it also creates some level of negative apprehension in our mind. But fortunately, our government has acted in a very decisive fashion, and I think we'll have to give them the credit that in spite of having one of the largest populations in the world, in spite of having meager resources, in spite of having a very federal, decentralized structure, the government has done a fabulous job in ensuring that the cases come down, and they've also opened the economy in a staggered but in a very decisive fashion. And various interactions that we've had with the government, at different levels, they've assured us that this reduction of numbers is here to stay, and the chances or likelihood of second wave or a third wave, although it's impossible to predict if that will happen. But from government's point of view, we've given a lot of confidence that it's unlikely these waves will come back. And also to that end, they've given us assurance that they would not encourage any sort of lockdown as we move forward.
All right. Thank you so much. That's it from my side.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Hussain Kagzi from Ambit Asset Management. Please go ahead.
Hi, my question is with regards to F&B. So can you give some color on the F&B spends? So I wanted to understand whether we've opened up F&B in all the theaters that we've opened up, or is it selective on that side?
We've opened it in all sites except for the fact that in Maharashtra we are serving F&B to be consumed in the foyer, and because of which patrons are unable to carry their food articles inside the auditorium. But beyond that, we are also operating on a bit of a curtailed menu so that we could sort of serve many more people and keep the strike rates intact. Beyond that, all SOPs are being followed, and perhaps actually PVR is going slightly beyond the SOPs to ensure that food safety and any kind of other hygiene processes are well maintained.
Okay. And apart from that, I just had one other question, which was with regards to, I just wanted to get a sense that what, according to you, would be the worst case scenario going ahead. I mean, there's no doubt that we have enough liquidity to, survive this thing. But suppose, say for even this quarter and probably for some part of the next quarter, we are not allowed to go beyond 50% occupancy, then what would be the way ahead? I just wanted to get a sense from you that what would be the worst case scenario for you guys?
So, I think we've survived the first 9 months and 3 quarters of performance has demonstrated, our ability to manage our fixed costs really well during this time. And this is for a period when we were shut. As we reopen, The hope is that, we will keep some of these costs under check, and hopefully the revenue that will start kicking in with the new film releases will ensure that we get back to, at least stop the bleed over the next few months. So clearly, I think going forward looks much better. We think the worst is behind us, and hopefully, I think the cash burn over the next few months will be lower, simply because I think we will also have some bit of revenues to take care of some of the incremental costs post-opening. So that's broadly the thought process. And on top of that, as I said, we maintain a decent amount of cushion on liquidity front, and we want to bolster that further. And that's the way we're thinking about the business.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, due to time constraints, that was the last question for today. I would now like to hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Thank you everyone for taking out time for the call. If I have not been able to answer all the questions on this call, you guys can reach out to either Rahul or me directly, and we'll be happy to set up a separate call to address any questions that you may have. And thank you very much once again for taking out time for this.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks to the management of PVR, and thank you everyone for participating in the call.
Thank you. On behalf of